Thank you for staying with us. Right now, let's talk about democracy and the intrigues actually that we've been saying. And the latest is, the derecognizing, as the way it's called, of the leadership of the ADC, talking about the national secretary and, of course, the national chairman of the party, in which INEC has said, based on a court pronouncement, they cease, that's David Mark and Reverend Bukola, cease to be recognized as leaders of the African Democratic Congress, the ADC, and which that particular decision has been generating so much uproar, controversies, allegations, and counter-allegation. In fact, all of a sudden, or very easily, those of the ADC and a larger chunk of the opposition has been blaming the ruling APC. In fact, named the president to be responsible for whatever is going on in that party and in the fraternization, of political parties. And they are saying this, the president, his aim is, to have a one-party state. And this morning it was even reported as some individuals, including Barrister Falana, is saying whatever is happening now, he's been calculated to have Mr. President Bola Tinubu as the sole, as the only candidate in 2027. And so the ADC is demanding that, they have listed INEC to be a collaborator in this particular development as well. And they are calling for the resignation of the INEC chairman, Professor Wale Amupitan. They call for the immediate resignation of the chairman, Amupitan, accusing the electoral body of partisanship and undermining Nigeria's democracy. And addressing a World Press Conference in Abuja on Friday, ADC National Chairman David Mark said the party had completely lost confidence in the electoral umpire, insisting that INEC's recent actions were unlawful and a direct assault on democratic process. And the ADC leader traced the crisis to a dispute over the party's leadership, explaining that the current executives emerged from a National Executive Committee NEC meeting held on July 29, 2025 and duly communicated to INEC. He maintained that the commission had prior knowledge of the process and had even uploaded the names of the new leadership before the controversy arose. And he dismissed claims by former party official Nafiu Bala to the ADC leadership, noting that Bala had resigned months before initiating legal action. And Mark argued that INEC's decision to treat both factions as equal amounted to creating a false equivalence and an artificial leadership vacuum within the party. Now, let me quote, Mr. Mark, Senator Mark, the only conclusion Nigerians can draw is that the electoral umpire has taken sides and can no longer be trusted. By the way, INEC has stated that allegation as well, and they have said they won't be coerced into playing, that kind of game with anybody. They are so focused on this matter. Now, this particular document you are seeing on your screen right now is, possibly the last straw that broke the camel's back. And as you can see there is a suit that was filed before the court, and you can see those that were involved there. And on Thursday, the 12th day of March 2026, before the lordships Uche Chukwu Onyemenam, that's my lords, because of time, the suit, appeal number CAABJ/145/2026, between Senator David Mark and Honorable Nafiu Bala Gumbe, African Democratic Congress, Ogbeni Reverend Bukola, Independent National Electoral Commission, Chief Ralph Nwosu. They are the respondents, actually, in which, in this particular case, Senator David Mark is seen as the appellant. Judgment delivered by Uche Chukwu Onyemenam. This is an appeal against the ruling of the Federal High Court, Abuja Division, presided over by Emeka Nwite in suit number wherein the trial court, after hearing an ex parte application, allegedly failed to determine the same. Actually, I'm building towards a particular purpose. So here it is seen again that it is hereby ordered as follows, that The suit and is hereby granted an accelerated hearing in view of the electoral timetable released by the fourth respondent, that the parties are hereby directed to maintain the status quo ante bellum and shall refrain from taking any step or doing any act capable of fostering a fait accompli on the court or otherwise rendering nugatory proceedings before the trial court and appearances was made and all of those things. But before that time, okay, some will say maybe there are issues in that particular party, pending issues, especially about the leadership, about this particular Nafiu Gulumbe, who was said to have resigned, and recently who said he didn't resign. That whatever people have been seeing as his resignation letter was forged, and here we are now. The latest is that INEC, as you know, in a kind of way, derecognized, and they said David Mark, according to court rulings, and of course, Raifu Aregbesola, you are no more the leaders of this party. And so the question is money. Is it many questions? But you know, as we look into it, we unpack what is happening. Is it really President Bola Ahmed Tinubu that is overbearing? Because he has said severally that he's not interested in a one-party state. In fact, he said it last week or at the weekend at APC National Convention. He's saying, you know, when you are opposition, it makes the game sweeter. But he has always maintained it won't be a responsibility to organize your house for you. He can only do whatever is good for his state. And he say he remains a Democrat. Well, opposition fingers have always been pointed to the man to say he's the one responsible. He doesn't want any opposition to stand because he wants to be the sole candidate for the next election. And or there are issues. And when the leaders, some have said when the leaders, these David Mark, these coalition of people, when they moved into that party, that they are supposed to do their due diligence, not to step on any trap. So if that is on the ground, why will you now be blaming the APC? Why will anybody now be blaming President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to be responsible for whatever is happening in your house? We have somebody who will help us with that this morning. The Executive Director, Kimpact Development Initiative, Mr. Bukola Idowu, joins us virtually. Good morning, Mr. Idowu. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. It's good to be here. Thank you.
Well, interesting times, isn't it? With what we are having right now. What do you say, you know, to these developments? Because this is where we are. When it seems like the ADC is gathering momentum and many persons are starting to take them seriously, then, you know, everything falls off. And immediately, some will say instead of the ADC to do a self-introspection, all of them are just pointing their hands at the president, and they have even, you know, carpeted INEC to say they are collaborators, because what is being planned is to have a one-party state. Your take on that, really?
Well, I think there are no facts to that to say that we don't have that evidence to say that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is in charge of what is exactly going on in those political parties. At the same time, you cannot say that because you've not seen any publication anywhere, you've not seen any directive anywhere that says that, look, is one responsible for what exactly is going on. Number two is that you also now need to understand that the people saying this also know what exactly they are saying, and so it's like a balance. Why you cannot actually say that the president is in charge, you cannot also throw out completely the insinuations of the allegation of the people saying it. It's just for them to just prove the allegation, but by the mere happening now, you cannot actually use that to substantiate. However, in any democracy, you need to understand that there are major players. Number one is the political party. These are the people who organize and seek political offices. Number two is the electoral umpire, you know, and then number three, you also look at the citizen that actually cast their vote. Now, the judiciary is brought in to mediate in terms, because election democracy is also a game, and we call it a game of numbers. And in any competition where decision is being made and where you will have a winner or you will have somebody that come first, there are bound to be there are bound to be conflicts. So judiciary is brought in that instance to reconcile, to settle conflict. So think about it. Even in the game of football that is even being played on the pitch, you still have like cars, you still have a tribunal that sort out conflicts. So what is bound to happen in any competition. However, why our own case is so unique is that the institution meant to resolve conflicts have now become a situation where they make the environment to be very, very difficult, and in some instances they begin to declare winners and then losers and begin to go beyond what they should have been doing. In fact, our own case is so peculiar to the extent that, look, we don't have the single rule. In some instances, you will see the judiciary refraining and saying, look, we are not interfering in any internal affair of any political party. In some instances, you see judgment coming into that part. They begin to deliver judgment. But having said that, you see, let's talk about INEC. You also look. I mentioned like about three: the political party, the INEC, and the citizen. Then the judiciary just brought in. Now, but the truth of the matter is this: when you look at the judgment, in fact, I like the way you scroll it on your, on the screen, and that judgment actually talk about the status quo. The status quo should be maintained. Yeah. Now, the concern for many of us now is that, look, what exactly is the status quo? Who should maintain status quo? Now, is it the person that went to court and also the respondent? So we are looking at we are looking at the petitioner and we are looking at the respondent. Now, so again, if INEC is claiming that they need to maintain status quo, then what is the status quo before the judgment? Now, as it is now, if INEC is claiming not to recognize David Mark leadership, and at the same time you are not recognizing Gombe, so who exactly is, what is the leadership of ADC looking like now? So because what you expect is that the status quo before going to court should be maintained, but it looks like INEC has gone beyond the borders to interpret what they shouldn't have, to even dabble into what they shouldn't have. Because if at the end of the day you want to interpret that, probably you can now say, look, okay, before you go to the court, what was existing, and then we maintain it pending the determinant of the substantive case as instructed by or as delivered in that judgment by the Court of Appeal. But what they have now, they have thrown that party who will be having congresses and convention in coming days or weeks, and they throw that into confusion. And that is why people are saying, look, most of this thing is favoring the ruling party, because if all of them are in disarray, then it looks like the ruling party is just going to go into that election uncontested. As of today, Labour Party still have court cases, NMPP have court cases, PDP have court cases. So you have most of these major, including AAC, the Showore party too. There are issues around. You see, so when you now begin to look at some of these things, you now begin to, are we actually going into a single, single party system as we approach this election, which is not good for our democracy? I think, in my own view, I think INEC has stepped beyond their boundary. And then when you look at the shambolic when you look at the statement they put out. It is so annoying in the sense that it is actually they claim that a law firm has written to them, a law firm has sent this to them, and you are acting. Now, in that particular judgment, you are also one of the respondents. You are not reacting to that judgment, you are reacting to what a law firm sent to you. And I mean, you are so expected to have the certified true copy of that judgment. And it's worrying what they are really doing.
All right, so we have so much to unpack this morning, because some are pointing at ADC that you can't put your issues on other people. Same as Labour Party. There was issue of Mr. Pampa with Abure, and later, when you think that was said, that was in the Labour Party, and then there was Abure versus Nenadi Usman, and now, we have Nenadi Usman, and by that time, some persons are moved out of the ADC. It seems the ADC is having its act together, all of, and there are individuals, especially the presidential candidate of that same party, who has alluded that the party was hijacked, that what was done was not handing over. And we look at all of that today, but that'll be after now. Please hang in there.
And enduring, so that when that time traveler returns again and makes another stop somewhere in 2022 or beyond, they will find something remarkable, a reliable record of our time, a testament to excellence in African broadcasting, still standing, still telling the story. Television in your color and culture, Western Spring Television, as it is.
I've been one of the few people to see a pangolin in the wild. And I've visited an amazing high-tech clinic treating pangolin seized from the illegal trade in South Africa. And now I've traveled to Lagos to learn more about the trade. Nigeria has become essential.
Can you imagine the feeling when you get your news as the break with facts and clarity? Our news are reported as it is.
In Africa, and all those who masterminded the way it happened will have to pay a price.
Enjoy Western programs, projecting culture and tradition to the world. Brought to you as the break and recapped every hour for your update.
Fellow Nigeria, how to improve your welfare is of paramount importance to me.
Produced and brought to you in a unique way never before seen.
Western Spring
and Western Spring Television. Television is coming home in your color and culture.
Do you still remember your lines?
Thank you.
3, 2, 1, you are live.
What do you look for in a news bulletin?
What separates a good news bulletin from the ones you see on online blogs?
What does it really mean to deliver news as it is?
As it is?
Accurate, swift, informed, trusted, impartial, straightforward.
I see what you did there. Let me give it a try. Authentic, source verified, in-depth, timely, independent, spotlight.
From the news desk, where accurate reporting is prepared with precision, nothing escapes our watchful eyes as we bring you the news swiftly, right as it breaks. True, well-informed research from trusted sources, because we are a trusted source. We deliver every story without any form of leaning or ideology. We remain impartial. We remain straightforward. This is Western Spring Television. You are welcome to news as it is.
Right. Thank you for staying with us. Still on the, democracy, party politics. The opposition parties in Nigeria are complaining of being, choked, and the ruling party under the leadership of President Bola Tinubu do everything to wreck whatever has become of them and have a one-party state, an allegation the president has refuted so many times. The latest is these issues in the ADC. The ADC has blamed the president. They have called for the sack of Professor Wale Amupitan of INEC. And of course, INEC has responded as well. And they have said, their action follows court and constitutional provision. So nobody should, point any accusing finger at them. In the statement released by the Chief Press Secretary to the INEC Chairman Idowu Oketola, it said proceedings to monitor the Congress and convention of the David Mark-led ADC will amount to disobedience of a court order since the release claiming the originating summons, including an order restraining INEC from monitoring any meeting, Congress or convention of the party. And I think that is talking about, when Bolaji Abdullah, the spokesperson of the party, said, irrespective of what has happened, they will go ahead with their congresses and nothing will happen. Now, this particular document you have on your screen is referring to Leke Abejide. That's the ADC rep, the only rep they've ever had at some point. And, he's quite a big fish before this leadership of the David Mark. And you see this particular screenshot was published on August 10, 2025, attributed to Daily Post, where it said, we'll send Atiku Obi Aregbesola David Mark Amechi out of ADC. And that will show somebody that there have been issues in that party before. Leke Abejide, House of Reps member representing Yagba East, Yagba West, Mokpamuro Federal Constituency of Kogi State, where he warned, that coalition leaders, he forecasted that these leaders will be sent out of the party if they go ahead, to take over the leadership of that party. So it will show us that there were issues before now. I will allow you take a listen to Dumebi Kachiku. Dumebi Kachiku was the presidential candidate of that same party, and this was his position on this development.
ADC family and friends. Yesterday, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, in response to recent court ruling, said it has ceased to recognize the David Mark-led caretaker committee. They went further to say they won't recognize any faction until all matters in the courts have been decided. As is expected, I have been inundated with calls and messages seeking my reaction to INEC's latest position. How did we get here? Did hundreds of our so-called political giants just commit political suicide? How did they get sucked into this quicksand? Let me tell you how. Rafunsu, whose tenure as chairman of the African Democratic Congress lapsed on the 21st of August 2022, sold the ADC to men who had destroyed their parties and were seeking for another party with which to prosecute their grudge match against President Tinubu and the APC. This group of mostly ex-political office holders who have held sway over the affairs of Nigeria for the last 40 years or more had attempted to register the ADA and then jumped to the SDP before they gate-crashed the ADC in the middle of the night. How do you explain this? Jumping from political party to political party, no ideology, no belief system, standing for nothing and believing only in the notion that power is their birthright. I had long warned that the ADC was bad market and that anyone who attempted to come into the party through the back door will be shown the way out through the windows. What we are seeing today is just the beginning. There are several court cases that will end at the Supreme Court, and the only way they can win is if the Supreme Court can change Monday to Saturday and Saturday to Tuesday. But again, this is Nigeria, where anything and everything is possible. So, all those of you who join these geriatrics because you seek to contest for positions in the 2027 general elections, I regret to inform you that the action
All right, dear viewers, that was Dumebi Kachiko, and maybe this would further cement that notion that all wasn't well with the ADC ab initio. Of course, we spoke earlier with Mr. Bukola Idowu of the KDI. Still with us, Mr. Idowu? Are you still with us?
Yes, I'm still here.
Thank you very much. And of course, we are being joined by public affairs analyst, media consultant, Dr. Ologun. Thank you for joining us as well.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Now, let's pick it up from you as well. I guess, I don't know, maybe you heard the initial submission of Mr. Idowu. Now, with this information that we have, especially the latest from their former presidential candidate, I'm talking about the Dumebi Kachiko, doesn't it show that all wasn't well with that party in the first place? Or do you see this position of Leke Abegunde, the rep that they had initially, still have it, and Dumebi Kachiko, who was presidential candidate, testified that it was more like a great crashing, it was more like a hijacking. But then David Mark led side said everything was done the way it's supposed to be. Or do you see Dumebi Kachiko like a pained man who is now grandstanding because he was sidestepped? Well, and why should President Bola Ahmed Tinubu be blamed for this development in this party, even from the start?
I think we should pick it up from that's your last statement. Why should President Bola Tinubu be blamed? He will be blamed because it's an interested party in this whole process. Is hoping to be the candidate of the APC in the 2027 general election. So by all standards, being the incumbent president, to whose presidency INEC is tied to, it is normal, it is common sense that any other party will blame him for one or two roles in the crisis rocking their party because he is an interested party in the whole process. It's contested. And the INEC is a product, as of today, until the constitution is changed, is tied to the apron of the presidency as the constitution has provided for it. So there's no way you can take away blame, whether rightly or otherwise, away from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in all of them. Having said that aside, the fact remains that Hall was never well with ADC ab initio. See, this category of former leaders, former this, former that, who brought themselves together, I see it as a marriage of inconvenience that was not going to last. How it will end, I didn't know. But now I think things are beginning to show up in ways that they're likely going to end their political career. Look, when these people came together, just like that, the pained former presidential candidate of the ADC, Kachiko Radley said, started with the notion or with the intention of registering ADA. People were shouting Ada, Ada, and all of that there. Then when that wasn't working, they made attempts to take over the leadership of the SDP. I remember very vividly that at one of those times you had president candidate of the SDP on one of your programs, Wale Adebayo, saying that it was not going to happen. Maybe it was difficult to take over SDP because Wale Adebayo was president candidate of the SDP, is one of the top lawyers in Nigeria, so he knows the dynamics and they know what could be awaiting them. Then they left the SDP and came over to take over the ADC. And look at the history of how they took over the ADC. What David Mark is claiming now is clear for everyone who was following the history. That Gombe, who was the SY chairman, resigned purportedly because there are still issues about his resignation. While his resignation was tendered to INEC, which made INEC to oversee the inauguration of our Arabian land, David Mark, Gombe came back later, 4 months after, to deny that resignation and asking the court to recognize him as the chairman of the ADC.
That was the deputy.
He was a deputy and was the acting. Chairman has left. The chairman left, so he became the acting. So 4 months after, the man that was said to have resigned came back asking the court to recognize him as the substantive chairman of the party. One would have thought that process should have been seen through before the David Mark Aregbesola thing. In all of this, a big question mark is resting on INEC because sometimes in politics, everything is not about the rule of law and everything should be about it. But in the context of politics, there's what you call perception, which you cannot take away from whatever is being done in all of this. The question would be, when INEC knew that case by Gombe, the SY acting chairman of the ADC, was in court 4 months after his reported resignation, why did they go ahead to monitor the inauguration of Aregbesola and David Mark as substantive chairman and secretary of the ADC. So the same people whose inauguration you witnessed, by which you transmitted their names on the website of the INEC as the chairman and secretary of the party, is the same people you are now claiming that you have an instruction or you have a letter or whatever document from a law firm or from the court of law to de-recognize. So what happened to the integrity of INEC, who supervised the inauguration of this chairman and secretary ab initio? And that's why the issue of perception comes in. What is the interest of INEC in all of this? Why are you appropriating and reprobating at the same time? You cannot continue to be here today and be there tomorrow. And this is an arm of government. I call it an arm of government because ordinarily it is not independent as it is made to be. You hear the name Independent National Electoral Commission, but the truth is, it's an appendage of the presidency. The president still decides who becomes the chairman of INEC only by the confirmation of the Senate. So even if you check their plate number and what have, it still carries the presidency. So he's seen as an agency or as an arm or an extension of the presidency. So that's why you cannot take away Bola Ahmed Tinubu in all of this. As the president of the country, who oversees the affairs of the INEC, who appointed the INEC chairman, and who is contesting in this election, one would have expected that some things are better left on the. But the question is this: I am saying, even though the APC has reacted, I read their own rejoinder and what have you. But what we are having in 2027 is likely going to be a coronation, just like Dino Melai said on the TV a couple of days ago. We may end up having a coronation, because how do you say you are contesting an election when all other political parties cannot present candidates? If this case is seen through, ADC will not likely to have a presidential candidate, because how do you have a presidential candidate when you are having congresses that are not monitored by INEC? So eventually, ADC might end up not having a presidential candidate. The AAC, just like Idowu said the other time I listened to him while I was coming into the studio, are also having their own case in court. Labour Party is having their own case in court. The Senate Labour Party is having their own case in court. NNPP, where Kwankwaso is living, PDP is having their PDP is at the morgue already, awaiting burial. So at the end of the day, if all of this,
they just had a convention.
Which convention?
With new leaders.
A convention with new leaders,
and it was monitored by same INEC,
controlled by somebody who is a member of the cabinet of another party.
Well,
so if all of these major political parties end up not having presidential candidates, as it is looking like, then what you are going to have in January is more of a coronation than an election.
Doctor, I was some days ago when the listing came up. I was speaking with my colleague right here on the show. Was talking about the place and the activity of the court in all of this. Several times before this administration, these parties had factions. In fact, there was a new PDP that broke out and joined this, the ACN and all of those to build up what we now know as the APC. It happened too. There was faction also in the APC. But what we have on our hands, I'd like to take you back to this. Thank God you mentioned the thing about thank God you mentioned the word coming from Dino Melai, but I attribute it to Dele Farotimi, who said there might be a coronation and not, elections as we say, but that other parties are preparing for elections, but the APC, INEC, and the courts are preparing a coronation. It also comes to, what Falano and Adams, Gani Adams said also on the papers today, that coming into this 2027 elections, we might be fielding just one candidate for the polls. And I'd like to ask you critically, the part of the court, and Falano also said that it is entrenched in the Electoral Act. The court is not supposed to interfere in politics. But where we are today, I'd like to ask your view on this. How did we get to where courts are now deciding which faction to really, to put an appendage on, which faction to recognize, and which one to delete?
Internal party.
See, we got here the moment Nigerians became carried away by emotions, sentiments, and the notion of what they expect, contrary to what is right. And I'll take us back some 12, 13 years ago. When Tinubu, with due respect, President Tinubu now, was doing all he was doing through the courts to bring in people into office of the governor across different states, he was being applauded. Some of us warned Because I still checked my record. I saw one of the interviews I granted them where we won. That look, this is a trend that will come back to haunt us. But because that was what the people wanted at that time, they were applauding the abnormality. The governorship of Raouf Aregbesola was made possible by the court. The governorship of Olusegun Mimiko in Ondo State was made possible by the court. The governorship of Fayemi in Ekiti was made possible by the court. We can go on and on. But when all of that were happening, because of our sentiment as Yoruba people, because we were tired of the shenanigans of the PDPs at that time, everyone were applauding what seems to be the takeover of government, rather, instead of true election by the court. The best the court could have said was there were irregularities in the process of an election. Go back and conduct another election. Let the people decide who leads them. But rather, the court took over the power from the people. And then a panel of 5-6 people sits in the name of appeal court. But then, don't forget, the climax was the appeal court in governorship election at that time.
At the time.
So a panel of 5 or 6 will sit, look at technicalities. That was the reading word. They look at it and tell you they were for technical reasons. The election was this, the election was that, and as such, the division of the people has been set aside. This person has been announced as the governor. And we all applauded it. Forgetting that the power to elect who leads us was being taken away from other people. 2-3 million people will go to vote to the polling booth to elect a leader. But for a reason of technicalities or inconsistency in the process of the election, you will say that the votes of 2-3 million people are irrelevant. Then a panel of 5 or 6 people will sit down to coronate one individual, and then he becomes governor. But we applauded it because we were sentimental as a people. We were tired of the government and the shenanigans of the PDP, who was the ruling party at that time. So we applauded abnormality. Now the abnormality has turned around to haunt us. Because what we allowed then is what we are now saying no to now. The Raouf Aregbesola, who is crying foul now, as the secretary of the ADC, was a beneficiary of this same process of a panel bringing him into power as governor of a state. And that's why they will tell you in the street panels that so when it benefits you, you applaud. When it's the other way, we cannot continue that trend. The court should hold no power to decide who leads us. It should be the decision of the people. But because we've allowed it 12-13 years ago, and we were not careful to raise voices collectively against that trend, look at where it has landed us.
This is even about internal party affairs.
Yes. Yes, some of those processes that brought in those people 12-13 years ago were also part of internal process. How did Yaya Bello become governor in Kogi State? Was it part of the elections that brought him in as governor? Was it supposed to be? Was it the second? Was it the running? Was it the second? Or the runner-up in that election by every standard?
Almost same thing between Celestine Omeya and Rotimi Amechi.
Of course, in Rivers. But all of them, because it was aligning with our sentiments, we were applauding it. Now the table has turned to haunt us. The question would be, the man who orchestrated virtually all of these instances we have given is today the president. So what makes you feel he has not mastered that terrain, he has not mastered that strategy in 12-13 years? And that is why it's looking like they have said, in January, we are going to have a coronation, and not because they have practically put the power of who becomes what in the hands of the court. The court should not put their face or their mouth or their hand into issues that has to do with party affairs. But I blame us as a people, because what we allowed is what has turned around to haunt us.
All right. Yeah, okay.
All right. Let's go back to Mr. Bukola Idowu. You've also seen all of this. I'd like to ask you, you've been an election observer all of the while, and you also had that part, especially coming from Mr. Falano here, ASEAN, who said that the Electoral Act prohibits interference, of the courts in all of this. I'd like to ask what you think about court interference in, party affairs, especially because it ultimately affects the quality of candidates we have filled in for elections.
Thank you very much. I think my brother there was very, very correct and apt in his submission on what the level of interference of the judiciary in a democracy. And I also want to put another layer of warning based on what he has said, just to take it further. You see, one of the things that the APC people, they are applauding today, in the coming years, it will come back to haunt them in their own political party. And one of the things we need to begin to look at is that we need not to be selfish as Nigeria. I think we are first Nigerian before you are a member of a political party, because whatever you are applauding today will come back to haunt you. You see, people like, just like I said, people like, Aregbesola and co, who went in through the court, are now crying foul now that, though, the court should not be interfering. It was good then we want to say it was bad now. I mean, it is bad now. Now, at the same time, look what is happening now, and that the APC is applauding and they are moving forward and saying, oh, we cannot sort your house, organize your house for you. A time is coming that, look, they will be reminded, because you cannot, and it's just there. You can, except you are a dictator. Even a dictator will one day leave. You cannot be in this power, in power for long. So that is that. One of the things you need to also understand in any democracy, and we have said this severally, even, I remember recently, I made a submission to the Court of Appeal recently on the level, and also the National Assembly, when they were actually amending the Electoral Act. He said, look, you have to take the power away from the courts to declare who a winner in an election is. Because if you don't do that, you are actually transferring the sovereignty from the people to the judiciary. And at the end of the day, you are likely going to begin to see what you call low voter turnout in our election. Because why will I go and vote when I know on the long run that 3 people, 5 people at the ends of appeal of the Court of Appeal or at the Supreme Court, we eventually decide the winner? Then why do I need to go and waste my time? Then it's better you leave it to them to begin to declare that winner. So this decision is going to begin to infringe on participation
Mr.
when it comes to election.
Let me come in here. The All Progressives Congress has dismissed, in their reaction, the claims by the ADC that it is plotting to undermine the party, describing the opposition as, in the words of Felix Morcanau, an assembly of Nigeria's most confused and desperate politicians. And in that strongly worded statement signed by him, that's National Publicity Secretary Felix Morca of the APC, he said the ADC is reaping the consequences of its own reckless and desperate misadventure amid the ongoing litigation and the leadership crisis within the party. Quite apart from being an assembly of Nigeria's most confused and desperate politicians, the ADC has distinguished itself as a peddler of rap-beat conspiracy theories about what the APC is or is not doing to undermine it. It described the ADC as a party that never was, calling it a kamikaze contraption with a self-destructive design. Well, interesting extreme words there. That's for him. But you heard Leke Abegunde as far back, Honorable Leke Abegunde, as far back as August 2025, predicted, maybe when he saw the signs, that all of these people moving in, when the time is right, we will push them out. August is about 9 months ago, thereabout, of 8 months ago. Maybe this is the time he was talking about. That was the rep they had at the time. And Leke Abegunde at that time was more like the party leader, because he was the most senior as far as having elective office, an elective person as an official, an honorable rep member. And you just heard Dumebu Kachiku, their former presidential candidate, said it was a hijacked. They came through the back door. So if this is there, like a disaster waiting to happen, and, for the purpose of this conversation and narrative, the APC or President Bola Ahmed Tinubu would decide to latch in on that disaster that was waiting to happen, why should somebody still blame President Tinubu because the ADC couldn't put its act together? Would that be a fair thing on the APC and the president? Looking at it from that angle.
In my opening statement, you recollect I said you may not have tangible, solid evidence to say the president is in charge of all these things that is going on. At the same time, you cannot dismiss the insinuation and the allegation of the opposition politicians who are saying this. These are not small boys. Let's get this right. The people making this allegation are also eating on the other side. Look, you are talking about Atiku, you are talking about Amechi, you are talking about El Rufai, you are talking about Dino Melaye. All of them at one point or the other, all of them at one point or the other be in APC. So possibly they know the card they are playing it there. So why you don't have that tangible evidence? Don't also throw away the insinuation of these people. Let's put it that way. Going back to the judiciary in Kenya, judiciary don't declare the winner. In Malawi, in South Africa, in Ghana, you see almost all over the world, they don't declare the winner. The best they do is they order recount. They can order recount, go and recount, or go and reconduct the election. And here, people will vote in the rain, in the sun. And then 6 months after, 3 people will sit down and say, no, you are not the winner. Number 4 is the winner. It doesn't really make any sense. But let's put that one aside. You see, the major threat to our democracy now, right now, that I have seen is not even this judiciary. It is the INEC that the judiciary will affirm all manners of shenanigans INEC will begin to do. See, you are talking about the PDP convention monitored by INEC. Did INEC not monitor Ibadan convention? INEC monitor Ibadan convention of the PDP. Now they are monitoring this. Now, look, INEC supervised the takeover of that particular of ADC, handing over to ADC leadership. INEC monitor it. In fact, before then, before the takeover, there was a NEC meeting in ADC, monitored by INEC, where INEC received from that meeting, there was a decision at that NEC meeting of ADC to hold that general meeting where that takeover will be done. And INEC was in that meeting. They have the minutes of that meeting because by law INEC was supposed to be at that NEC meeting. They have that meeting, and now go and look at the document ADC have put out. ADC sent to INEC and said, look, these people have resigned and from the party, please update your record. And INEC duly acknowledged that thing. Based on that, INEC went on their website and made that adjustment. Now, 4 months later, somebody came and said, look, I did it, my resignation was forged, and you went to court 4 months later. See, let's talk theoretically. I am not a member of their political party, but let's just look at some things theoretically. What were you doing? A party was taken over, and then you suddenly woke up after 4 months. I know there is a principle in law. I think my brother Ologun will be able to mention this. Look, if somebody is building on your land, the person is building on your land, and you are looking at the person, you did not do anything, and the person complete the house, and you are not coming to court. What were you looking? So 4 months after, you suddenly wake up and say, look, you are the rightful owner of this particular thing. Is it
INEC that we should be blaming here? Because Tokwe just made that point when he was asking Dr. Ologun that the INEC has said whatever the court says, we will do, actually. And interestingly, the INEC chairman is the senior advocate of Nigeria.
Let me give you part of what is antecedent.
So that you answer together.
Let me give you INEC antecedent so you understand.
Mr. Idowu. What he said was, whatever the court said in this case, in as much as it subsisted, we will do. This is the latest coming from our court as well. We will agree, we will do. If the case is appealed to the Supreme Court, we await it, we will do as well. Can the INEC cherry pick to say, oh, I don't agree with this court order, I would rather stay with this? Can they do that?
INEC cannot do that, but INEC can prevent some of these courts interference to happen. And it's because technically they have taken side, and I give you a good example, and I give you the antecedent. INEC wanted to, so look, where in that judgment said INEC should leave ADC leaderless. You did, so was ADC leaderless before they went to court? So when court is now saying please maintain status quo, does that mean leave them leaderless? You are not recognizing this party, you are not recognizing this party, then the entire political party is rendered leaderless.
On their website, let's tell ourselves the truth. Be determined by the court. To be determined by the court. That was what is on there. The status quo and the status quo belong. Look, go back to where this issue was before you approach this court, and then we will determine it. So what was the issue before you approach the court? Was there a leader? Was there, you see, and that was how happened in the case of PDP. Now in the case of PDP, INEC say, oh, they are not, they are not, the other faction, the two faction, we are not in anything, but they are inviting the two faction into the meeting. Now, when the court now say, look, Ibadan convention is not working. Do you know what the INEC did? Now, if the Ibadan convention is null and void, then who was the leader before Ibadan election? Now, INEC failed to recognize that, begin to frolic, moving with the other party. So what I am actually saying is that when INEC begin to shy away from what was done, now I give you, let's go to election petition tribunal. Have you noticed that INEC go to court? Let me give you a practical example. In the case of Edo, go and check it. In the case of Edo governorship election, INEC was adopting the brief of APC. INEC was adopting the brief of APC in that election, and you are saying they are independent. Now, so what exactly is going on with INEC that INEC cannot say, look, and tell the court, we monitor this, this is our position, put it out there. Now, I have taken it up with INEC several times, and let me give you this thing. INEC will monitor convention. INEC will monitor NEC meeting. You will never see INEC reports anywhere, and yet you are monitoring. What are you monitoring that we are not seeing your report? By now, people should have been saying, oh, according to INEC report, that NEC, they did not follow this. There was no agreement in this. But you will say you are monitoring convention, you are monitoring party primaries, you are monitoring NEC meeting, and there was none of your reports anywhere, and you will send your staff from headquarters from Abuja, pay them per diem, pay them hotel bill, pay them house inconvenience allowance to come to a particular state to say you are monitoring whatever is going on there. At the end of the day, nothing. So I think we need to begin to look into the position of INEC. Look, I hope you also notice that these days INEC is beginning to take some decisions that may eventually affect the credibility of the election in coming 2027. One of those cases is now, one of the things you need to also look at now, like I said, is that the shenanigans that INEC is putting up and that the judiciary may likely begin to affirm will lead us, and which I agree, will lead us to a weak contest in 2027 and the coronation being happen, and then we will lead us to the worst voter turnout in Nigeria history. Mark it if these shenanigans are not going. And lastly, let me say this: theoretically, and I say theoretically, the presidential candidate of any political party is not embedded in any structure of the leadership of that political party. Let's tell ourselves the truth. So are you saying because you are the presidential candidate of a political party, automatically that makes you part of the leadership, decision-making body of that leadership? It's not done.
All right, Dr.
As of today, even in any country, even in Democrats, in Republican in America, even in the UK, for the mere fact that you are part of, that you are a former president, It's not even embedded in there. Go and check their constitution. The leadership of any political party take preeminence. But what we have in Nigeria is that when you have maybe, for instance, Governor Adeleke, the moment is governor and is in a court, automatically assume the party leader. It's not done. So the Jumobi, the Leke Abejide, and also the former candidate. Theoretically, I'm not a member, but by the virtue of my work, I studied the party constitutions of all the political party. Now there is no position that says because you are this, our former candidate or the rep member, you are part of the decision making and you should be consulted when making this kind of decision. I rest here. Yeah. The only preference given is in terms of being a delegate.
All right. Let's talk to
All right. We're really running out of time. And I'd like to get the reaction of Dr. Ologun to some of the points he has raised. And on the issue of complacency, transparency, and complicity, as INEC, the ADC, I want you to talk on all of them. Which one has been complicit? Which one is complacent? And just being laid back in all of this, even when they're supposed to be taking the bull by the horn. Which one is not transparent enough? Let's have all of that, especially from his angle.
For the purpose of the use of the English language, while ADC is complacent, INEC is complicit. They are two different. IDC leadership is complacent because they saw trouble headlong.
But with these people that you can call rabble rousers now, Kachiku talking and Abejide as well, were they not complacent all of this while? He spoke to it.
The position of those two individuals you mentioned is inconsequential in all of this. Just like Mr. Idowu rightly said. See, some of these things, we got here because we allowed it when it was convenient for us. So when some of us shout that what you feel is beneficial today and you are enjoying is going to be a pain in the house, sometimes later, they give you all kind of name. See, Abebode and Kachiku, they are inconsequential in all of this. As what? None of them is a member of the NEC of the ADC. They are not part of the leadership of the ADC. They were only public office holder carrying the banner of those parties. So whatever they say is seen to me as people that are wasting time. So journalists are even going to them are only looking for what to make headlines, not because whatever they say has any importance or any relevance.
Balanala. This man in the eye of the storm now, the former deputy national chairman that is raising this rap.
You can tell that man has something to say. When I say complacency in the part of the ADC, the Aruf Agweshola, the David Mark of this world were complacent because going back to what the two of us have said, when that man purportedly resigned, what were they looking at? Not to have done the right thing by formalization, by ensuring that the court cases are closed before the man returned 4 months after, come and suit a case claiming that his purported resignation was forged. So why didn't they take him on in court as to the issue of forgery to authenticate whether that resignation was authentic or otherwise? They assumed that he was only making noise. They assumed that because they are former this, former that, they have the wherewithal to control the emotion or the decision of the court. That's where their complacency comes from. But when you talk about complicity on the part of INEC, INEC is complicit in all of this. Because just like the court, Mr. Idowu said, which I rightly agree with, the court did not say leave the party leaderless. The court simply say they should go back to the status quo ab initio. So the question would be, what is the status quo ab initio? The ab initio means before the case was brought to court. So the situation before the case was brought to court was the fact that this man purportedly resigned. So the first thing to be determined should have been the authenticity of his resignation or otherwise. That should have been one of the major issues to be resolved. So if you are saying that you should return to status quo before the case was brought to court, the status quo as at the time the case was brought to court remains that the man was resigned purportedly and there was an acting. Because don't forget that at the time he resigned, David Mark and Aruf Agweshola were acting chairman and acting secretary. So the best, if you want to go, without being a lawyer, if you want to go back to the decision of the court, which you go back to the position or ab initio before the case was brought to court. Before the case was brought to court, the issue remains that Gombe resigned. In court now. That should be determined. All right. So why that is being determined Oluwalegbesola and David Mark should probably revert back to being acting chairman and secretary, pending the determination of the court. Not you coming on your website to say to be determined by the court. You don't have such right.
And then on the issue of monitoring, Mr. Bukola Idowu said that INEC has never, at least we've not been seeing public, statements on the monitoring they've been conducting. What do you think to that?
INEC, I'm looking for the right word to use so that I don't use foul word on air. Look, when we talk about these things, it goes beyond INEC. I've been an election monitor for over 20 years. And sometimes when we're in situation rooms or when we're among the society guys, we ask ourselves, that, are you sure we're actually not wasting our time? What has been the influence of our monitoring in the last few years? The reports that we put together as society organizations after monitoring, what effect has it had? Because the court will not accept it as part of evidence in tribunal. INEC that you even submitted to do not even have one of their own. So what makes you think they will make use of your own? So what they simply do is to collect those documents and dump it somewhere. It becomes academic material. So if INEC has not been giving reports on their monitoring, I've been involved in politics. All right. I do consultation for a lot of politicians. So see, most of these INEC officials that come to states and local government for election monitoring, they don't step out of their hotel rooms. They must have collected allowances and what have you from the INEC.
I guess we have
somebody will put them in the hotel, they will eat and enjoy, and the following morning they will tell them what to write, and they jump into the next.
We are totally out of time. Thank you, gentlemen. But the ADC is calling for the sack of Amupitan, and INEC is saying that will not happen. Do you trust them to really deliver something that Nigerians will appreciate next year?
I think it's like expecting another Mary to give out to another Jesus. If you're expecting a credible election from the Amupitan-led INEC, it's an expectation that will never come.
Dr. Ologun, thank you so much for your time. Mr. Bukola Idowu, Executive Director at KDI. Thank you for your time as well. We'll keep talking about these and interesting days ahead, as they say. Femi Ojo is my name. Thank you for staying with us all week. We'll make a return next week, Monday. You can have a recap of all the editions of this program on our YouTube channel at Western Spring Television NG. God bless Nigeria.
All right, it's always interesting to have the duo of Dr. Ologun and Mr. Bukola Idowu. It's always quite interesting. All right, it's good to have you join us on this last installment for the week. This is Morning Spring right here on Western Spring Television. I'll see you again next week. And my name is Timmy Tope Ajijola Oluwaola. Bye-bye.